YouTube. Today I wanted to cover VTP. What is VTP? Well, it stands for VLAN Trunking Protocol. It's a Cisco proprietary technology used to transmit VLANs to other switches automatically. Now, the basic setup is having a server switch where you configure your VLANs, and then the protocol will propagate those VLANs to other switches in the same domain. So that's the basic the operation of VTP for version 1 and 2. So by default, version 1 is enabled. Let's get to configuring. Now the first step is to set up a Vtp domain. And this is how you configure that for switches to be in the same domain. And the global config command, so let's get in global config, is Vtp Domain. I'll just call mine HQ. Now, once that's complete, we have to pick which switch is going to be the server or the client. This is also a global configuration command, and that is Vtp Mode Server. And then on my other switch, I'll configure this to be Vtp Mode Client. I'll also make sure that this is in the same domain. Oops. And we can verify this now by doing the show VTP status command. And we see we're running version 1, the domain is HQ, and this is the server. Here, let's do show VTP status. And here, running version 1, the domain is HQ, and the operating mode is client. We can also use like show VLAN brief to see if the VLANs are configured and propagating. I don't know if I've created any yet, so let's see. No, so let's create one really quick. Now, before we do, let's see if there's any here. Show VLAN brief. Alright, there's nothing there. Let's type VLAN 10, 11, 20. Let's see if we're seeing them here. 10, 11, 20. Now let's see if we... 10, 11, 20. So it propagated over. Alright, a couple of enhancements that can be done to improve both the performance and the security of VTP is requiring a password, so authenticating, and enabling pruning. And what pruning does is, if a switch doesn't have that VLAN configured on it, it doesn't need to be on the trunk, so it can be pruned off of it. So the commands to enable these features are VTP password. Let's do that now, actually. T, VTP password. I'll just use Cisco 123. I'm going to set that here as well. VTP password, Cisco 123. And now for pruning, you only need to configure this on your server. So VTP Pruning is the command. So now let's do show VTP status, and we should see now that pruning is enabled. And let's do show interface trunk. As you can see, we are now VLANs in a forward and not pruned. So 10, 11, and 12 are being pruned, so we shouldn't have them over here either. Show interface trunk, and we don't. So we are now pruning based on that command. There is one other state of VTP that VTP can be in that you should be familiar with, and that is transparent mode. And now what transparent mode does is it essentially turns off VTP. Now it will still receive VTP packets, but it won't process them. So it will, however, forward them if it's in the same VTP domain. Now the command to enable transparent mode is also done in global config mode, and that is Vtp Mode Transparent. Now, again, to verify this, we can just use the show VTP status, and we're seeing we are now in transparent mode. Now, in most networks, you're going to see the switches in transparent mode. Now, with version 2 of VTP, There are only a few differences from version 1. Version 2 supports token ring VLANs. It will do consistency checks, and it will also pass VTP packets if the switch is running in transparent mode without verifying that it is in the same domain. So not too many differences between them. To enable version 2, the command is global config command Vtp version 2. And to check that, we can again use our favorite command, show Vtp status, and we're now showing version 2. Now, the final version of Vtp, version 3, adds many new features. It now supports all 4096 VLANs, because here you can see it shows just 1005. And there is now support for MST configuration propagation. So, in the previous video about rapid or multiple spanning tree, we had to configure a global configuration for multiple spanning tree. This will now take that and propagate it to other switches. To enable version 3, it's again a global config command, Vtp version 3, and we can make sure we are running that now. And we see we're running version 3, and now all 4096 VLANs are supported. And that we're in transparent mode for both MST and VLAN. Now, once enabled, most settings in configuration mode is the same as version 1 and 2. As in, the password settings can be made this way, pruning, the other VTP modes. To enable the use of Vtp to manage MST, the command in global config mode is Vtp Mode Server MST, or its client MST. And then, now the main difference now is that the server that makes the changes, either for VLANs or MST, must elect itself, and then only that one VTP server can make changes. So if someone accidentally has everything set to server, only one can still be the server, the Vtp primary. And that is done to get that server elected. We do it in exec mode, and the command is Vtp primary. And now there's two options. You can do VLAN or MST. So VLAN obviously does just VLANs, MST just does MST, or I can just use Vtp primary and it will be the primary server for both. So I'll just do both. Oh, let me switch Vtp mode server for VLAN as well. Now, the switch is going out and seeing if there are any other primary Vtp servers, and it'll eventually ask me to confirm that it wants to become the primary. Now, there's a setting you probably saw when I hit the question mark was force. And what that does is just takes control of the server, and you'll be able to make the commands that way. So we're now the primary server. So this server is the one I can make changes on, and it would propagate. And now, like I said earlier, in most environments, Vtp will be set to transparent mode, especially if you're running version 1 or 2. Now, the main reason for this is that when a switch is in server client mode, it has a field called configuration revision. If for some reason a switch is added to the domain that has a higher revision number but has nothing configured on it, it will remove all the VLANs that are in the current production Vtp domain. So this can be very dangerous if things are messed up. And that is why generally I'd recommend setting this to transparent mode. Alright, so thanks everyone for listening. In my next video I want to start discussing how to make a VLAN talk to another VLAN, and that will be using the router on a stick configuration. Thanks for sticking around.